Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we're going to be talking about restoration druids and raid preparations for Uldir. So Uldir is going to be released very soon, and one of the most common questions that I get on my stream is about how do I prepare my resto druid? Is autumn leaves really that good? And there's a really nice article on Questionably Epic that covers most of the things that I'll be talking about, so if you want to check it out, there's a link in the description below as well. So first of all, to prepare for raids as a resto druid means getting the correct Azerite traits. And there is no other trait better than autumn leaves. Now, first of all, for people who are unfamiliar with autumn leaves, if rejuvenation is your only heal over time effect on the target, increases the healing by a certain amount, and you can stack this. It stacks really nicely. So you can have 3 of these on your head, on your shoulders, and your chest, and it is highly recommended for every resto druid. I fully expect every raiding resto druid to go into Uldir with 3 autumn leaves and a specific default autumn leaves build, which is not going to create mastery stacks, and I'll talk about that later on. So first of all, when I saw this trait in beta, I almost thought this was kind of a joke, because this is a build, this is an Azerite trait that kind of controls the talent build that you're going to go with. I thought it's going to be absolutely garbage at the start. Like, people are gonna, as a resto druid, you want to stack mastery, those mastery stacks, you want to have as many hots. And in 5 months, it is. The way you do, or the way that you play your resto druid in 5 months, it's all about getting those mastery. Germination is really strong. You know, the Swiftman Azerite trait is really strong. That also leaves a hot on people. So all of a sudden, in 5 months, mastery stacking is really good. And autumn leaves is absolutely terrible in 5 months. But in raid situations, with the recent builds that has been discovered, autumn leaves is really strong. Like, to an extent that it's been nerfed a couple of times, and it's still by far the best Azerite trait you can get. Now, about 5 days ago, there was hotfixes happening towards many of the healer and other classes Azerite traits, and you could see the things like swelling streams for resto shamans. The healing was reduced by a big proportion, and for all the resto shamans who are playing and watching this video, they know that swelling streams was really overpowered Azerite trait, and it's been tuned down. I was really surprised not to see any autumn leaves changes, because actually, to be completely honest, I expect autumn leaves to be nerfed in the first heroic week. That's my expectation right now, because it's never good to have an Azerite trait that is way better than your secondary trait. It's never good, because all of a sudden any Azerite pieces that don't have autumn leaves become kind of worthless. Because right now, if you have a 320 blue Azerite piece, like let's say a helm that has autumn leaves, and then you have an epic 340 Azerite piece helm that doesn't have autumn leaves, you most likely will end up using the blue version that does have autumn leaves, because that's how strong it is right now. It is way... I don't know how many times I said this, autumn leaves is too strong. That's all I'm saying right now. So, first of all, does autumn leaves work with germination? It kind of does. The fact is that if you have rejuvenate, you can only have one version of the rejuvenation or the germination on a target active. And if you only have one of those, autumn leaves will work, regardless whether it's rejuvenation or germination. But the fact is that it doesn't work with both of them, means that you most likely will never use germination in raiding scenarios while using this autumn leaves full build. So keep that in mind. And like I mentioned, autumn leaves is pretty terrible in 5 months. Autumn leaves Azerite pieces that are lower, they're blue, still going to be stronger than the epic versions. I mean, it does depend on what the traits the epic versions have and things like that, but this is just the general rule of thumb at the moment. In terms of the talent builds that you're going to be using, there's really kind of one talent build that you're gonna go with this, because autumn leaves is so restrictive. First of all, in tier 15, you most likely will either probably go with scenario ward. Now, I know you're asking yourself, scenario ward is another hot, but the fact is that you're going to be keeping life bloom, rejuvenation, and most likely scenario ward on your tank. So you kinda don't mind the autumn leaves not working on your tank, because you also have life bloom, which counts towards your mastery and, you know, eliminates autumn leaves. So scenario ward is a good pick. You can always use it on your tank anyways. And then, you know, in tier 30, wild charge, tiger dash, depends on what you really want. Tier 45, most likely Guardian Affinity, because it is progression fights for most of the people. They don't want to die. Reduction in damage is always pretty good. Tier 60 really depends on what you want. It doesn't really matter. Now, these are the interesting ones. Tier 75 is where you most likely will be picking Incarnation Tree of Life. Either way, Incarnation Tree of Life most likely will be the default choice regardless of whether you use Autumn Leaves or not. So it's not that crazy of a pick. At tier 90, you'll probably be using Inner Peace, and this is kind of there's negative impacts to some extent to this, because first of all, Inner Peace reduces the cooldown of your Tranquility to 2 minutes. You kind of need to know how to optimize it. There's a lot of bosses in Uldir that kind of work with Inner Peace, and it makes your Tranquility very, very strong, because Tranquility is arguably one of the strongest healing throughput cooldowns in the game right now. So reducing the cooldown of it, it's always nice. Now, because you're using 3 Autumn Leaves, which is probably going to be the most recommended build at the start of raiding, you cannot really pick Spring Blossoms, because Spring Blossoms will add HOTS to people. So all of a sudden you gotta go with that Inner Peace. And then the tier 100 most likely is gonna be Flourish. Now there is some leeway towards some talents. So this is kind of like a default build that's right now very, very popular for a lot of Resto Druids who are gonna go into raiding scenarios. But there can be some differences here. But overall, like I mentioned, this build is basically the one that's assigned to people who are using those 3 Autumn Leaves. And guys, I tell you right now, start getting that, the blue gear or epic gear or whatever. Start really getting that Autumn Leaves right now. Don't disenchant the blue ones that have Autumn Leaves. Still keep them, because it's still very, very strong. Now, what happens with Wild Growth? There is a lot of debate about, do I use Wild Growth? First of all, Wild Growth has lost some of its power from Legion coming into BfA. It lost some of the artifact traits and things like that. But overall, you'll be just casting, if you don't have Autumn Leaves, you'll be casting Wild Growth every time there's some raid damage incoming. A lot of people will tell you to have, some kind of a notification when the damage is about to come in, 1 second before it. You cast your Wild Growth, and your Wild Growth is gonna hit just after the damage, and it's gonna heal up people. Now, with the full-on Autumn Leaves build, you might sometimes think twice about casting Wild Growth in certain situations. If the raid is kind of full, topped off, people are not really in danger, there's not that much healing needed, you might kind of stay away from Wild Growth and let your rejuvenation with triple Autumn Leaves do its work. Now, when there's a lot of damage incoming, of course you want to save those people, you want to add additional healing, and Wild Growth becomes you play the same way. Now, to some extent, without going into this whole playstyle, even if you don't really play to this Autumn Leaves build or this playstyle, Autumn Leaves is still a really strong trait, as long as you use these kind of talents that don't provide extra mastery stacks. You can play like you usually do and you still see really good numbers, but there is ways to optimize the playstyle, and especially Wild Growth usage when using Autumn Leaf. Now, in terms of other Azerite traits that you might want to pick up, or in the secondary ring, there is 2 that come in mind as one of the strongest ones that you really, really want to get. And those are Azerite Veins and Blessed Portents. They're extremely strong right now, and you're in the secondary ring, and you want to get as many pieces that have that. Of course, not every piece that has Autumn Leaves is gonna have Azerite Veins or Blessed Portents, so you might not always get the biz setup just yet, but have a look out for those secondary traits. They're quite strong, or actually one of the best ones to use right now. In terms of the stat priority, and this is one of the things that a lot of people have asked me, what is the stat priority for Resto Druids in raiding scenarios? It is relatively hard to determine, but the fact is that because you are using Autumn Leaves, you are using all of these talents that don't add extra mastery stacks, that mastery might dip down. By how much? I have no idea. But the usual thing to do is to install Healer Stat Weights. It's an amazing add-on. It works perfectly for Resto Druids. Install this add-on, go do your first Uldir boss using that 3 Autumn Leaf setup, using the specific talent build that I mentioned or something similar to that, and go and check the stat values of your mastery. There is a chance that mastery might dip down. The fact is that even a single rejuvenation from Autumn Leaves still benefits from mastery, means that mastery is not going to be the stat that you absolutely hate. It's still gonna have some value to it, but it might not be as much as I say like crit, verse, or haste. But use the healer stat weights add-on, see what the numbers are, and if it's low, swap out a ring with mastery or something. Swap out a ring that has mastery to something else. Have some gear replacements in case it's not as great. That's my general advice to anyone who's actually raiding right now, regardless of Resto Druid, regardless of what healing class they play. Healer stat weight add-on is really good right now. So overall, my personal thoughts, I've tested this. I've tested this in beta. I've raided with 3 autumn leaves. I've raided with a very similar talent build. I did the Cahoon and things like that. And honestly, I was going into a raid expecting it to be very stale and kind of boring. This play style, like I thought I was gonna hate it, but honestly, I really didn't hate it. It was quite enjoyable. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was expecting for the worst, and it wasn't that bad. Now, in terms of what I really hate about the autumn leaves is that, first of all, it locks you in with a specific talent build. You don't have much wiggle room. I don't want an Azerite trait to be this much better than the secondary trait. I don't want this big huge gap, because all of a sudden, like I mentioned at the start, any Azerite pieces that do not have autumn leaves will be just regarded as garbage in terms of raiding setup. And all of a sudden you have a talent build that's locked in for you. You don't have much wiggle room. You have this play style where every time you use wild growth, you kind of feel punished to some extent. It's a weird play style. I fully expect this to be nerfed. I really want to hear your thoughts about this. Hopefully this has provided some information towards what the raiding build is going to look like. What is the best Azerite trait? Autumn leaves is amazing. You want to stack, you want to get 3 of those at the start. You want to try and get the secondary rings to have Azerite veins or blessed portents. There's a couple of ones that are good as well, but those are extremely strong for the secondary ring. You want to go with a default build that I mentioned before, or something similar to that. Let me know, guys. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.